And ask yourself, is that God's vision of them? Is that God's perspective? Is that the way God sees them? Oh, Mark, he's a procrastinator. No, not at all. For us to be able to truly connect with each other, we have to break away from those kind of worldly point of view and the way that we look at things and totally rethink that and say, how can I see you the way God sees you? It's the only way that we can go if we're able to really truly kind of make the kind of connection that God intends, which kind of ties into the third one here, where it says we embrace our mutual dependence. No one wants to be dependent on anyone. I mean, we all want to be independent. We all, we don't want to share our needs. We don't want to ask that we need anything. We want to be able to justify the reasons why we don't need people so that we can kind of exclude them from our list of people we have to be around. And Paul describes in here examples of parts that are discrediting the others, whether it's ones that are wanting to pull themselves away and say, well, I'm not this, so therefore I'm not a part of it. It doesn't cease. And I would argue even when someone says, I don't want to belong to that church anymore, it doesn't change a thing. They don't have any say in that. I mean, they can finally go somewhere else and stop a restraining order. But by virtually saying, I choose to not be a part of you, doesn't change a thing. We're not given that option because if God has put us together, we're a part of a body, and there's no way that we can break that other than we choose to not to participate and be a part of that. And so he goes on and he talks about the same thing. We can look at people and he talks about, really, he's kind of using examples, which probably looks around the room and he sees people, the ones that are less honorable. He says those that are weaker, those that are immodest in what they do, and that we need to treat them with special modesty. He sees a connection that who they are doesn't have anything to do with their relationship with the church body, and in fact, it's all the more reason they're part of that body. We cannot look at people for the reasons that they wouldn't, or that there's no particular benefit that I have from other people. We need each other. What I can bring to you is as equal or maybe even less to what you can bring to me. There is something about you that will make me a better person by knowing you, by being connected with you, by spending time talking with you and relating with you and being together. I will be better for the time that I spent with you. Maybe it's how you help me, maybe it's even how I help you, but something in there will have an impact. If I look at it from God's point of view of what He's doing, and I recognize that there's an interdependence that takes place, that in that kind of a relationship and experience, that there's all happens under the umbrella or the shade of the gospel, that there's a transforming power that takes place, not just in you, but also in me. When I was in real estate, and it's nothing new, maybe you guys have the same thing. There's people in life that we would call EGRs, extra grace required. They were difficult. They were a handful. They were needy. There was things about them that we would say, oh, do I got the energy for that? Or do I even want to kind of allow that in there? I think that's a false expression. Because that expression implies the problem is them. The problem isn't them. The problem's me. God puts a needy person or an EGR in my life, not so that it's like, they need some help, Mark. You're the one to go help them. Maybe that's part of it. God puts a person in my life so that I can look at myself and say, wow, look how much grace I lack. Look how much I see them through my eyes and not God's eyes. Look how self-centered I am in my schedule, my time, my resources, and how much I need, that I don't even have within me the willingness to share of what I have for that person. I could go on and on to describe how many, just by the very nature of God putting a person like that in my life or your life, can impact the way that we see life. And we gain. And that's without doing anything for that person. All the more when we become connected and we actually do experience helping someone. When we do adjust our life to where we can come alongside one and do them a favor and help them out and show grace and allow that grace to flow and share with each other. According to God in this passage, that person is indispensable. That I would argue we can't be the church without that person. And we need to challenge ourselves as a church and as people to look for those kind of people, those who are struggling, those who are weak, and recognize that that is a call to arms for us to be the church, to draw them in, to lift them up, to put them in higher honor. Not only for them, but for us. To truly be the church that God has called us to be, to truly experience the life that Christ wants us to experience. But I would argue with you that this mutual dependence requires transparency. We have to be willing to set aside, and I get it. I have my own masks. Halloween's here. I got plenty of them. I don't know which one I'll wear. The codependent mask, or the pleaser mask, or the perfectionist mask. I mean, I got a lot of masks. I don't know how much candy they'd give me for one of those masks, but I got a lot of them. But the thing is, within the community of the church, with this relationship, within a place where you want interdependence, you got to set aside those masks. Because one person will not be honest to you unless you're willing to be honest with them. How can that be? There are people here, I am sure, that are hurting and suffering and struggling, who desperately want to hope, who want to have that experience of someone walking in the room and feeling better because someone's here to help me. And they beat themselves up thinking, well, no one else is like that. And I'm thinking, Guy, if you could only sit around and we all took turns sharing, you feel better because you realize, wow, my problems aren't as bad as theirs. There is so much to go around. And I think that lack of transparency, that lack of connecting, this interdependence, undermines the power of the church to truly be what we are meant to be. How do we know when we're connecting? How do we know that that's really taking place? Larry Crabb wrote this in his book. Connection occurs when the life of Christ in me touches the life of Christ in you. We know we have connected when, and I love this because we're talking about together we're trying to become more Christ-like and become the fullness of who we're supposed to be. And yet each one of us individually wrestle with the urges in our life and the distractions that would pull us away. And so what he says is we know we are connected when the urges to do good has been strengthened by our time together. We know we have connected deeply when those good urges compete successfully with our bad urges. When we find ourselves living by the Spirit and therefore not gratifying the desires of the flesh. He's quoting Galatians 5:16. We know we're connected, I'm out of that quote, but we know we're connected when we realize that we no longer are locked in and sucked in and defeated by the loneliness and the hurts and the pains and the regrets and the fears and the bitterness of our past, and we're set free. And we're encouraged to live on. And we know that even when we fail, that there are people there that'll pick us up and help us continue to move on and live on. We're connected when we experience healing and restoration. My biggest struggle, I shouldn't say biggest, I don't know, I got plenty of them. My longing for the church is to think, and I've said this to my wife hundreds of times, why can't people experience healing and restoration? Why do we as a church need to continue to outsource people to support groups and therapists and self-help books and Oprah, videos or whatever, where we have to go to these places to be able to find ways that we can live life better and be restored because somehow within the body of the church we don't get there.